Welcome, I'm Jill Menze, news editor at PhocusWire. And for this session on new roles and strategies for destinations, I'm joined here with Sigga, who is head of Visit Iceland. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So I want to start with kind of looking back at how Iceland has positioned itself amid the pandemic. You know, I think you had a strong aim to attract visitors who were looking to take their first flight back overseas. Can you talk a bit about your thinking there and how you were positioning the destination?
Yes, sure. What we did was during the pandemic, we tried to keep the conversation going with messages which addressed the situation we were all in. And we tried to offer something from Iceland to relieve the stress of that situation. So we had campaigns such as "Looks like you need to let it out," where we were reminding people to let out screams of frustration, and we broadcasted it into the Icelandic nature. And we also had the joy scrolling campaign, which was aimed to tackle the constant doom scrolling where people were doing on their phones, and offering joy scrolling, happy content from Iceland that you could joy scroll instead. So this is so we targeted our message towards first movers within our target group. But we tried to highlight how Iceland was one of the first countries to welcome visitors with testing at the borders in the summer of 2020, and also how Iceland opened up for US travelers and UK travelers outside of the Schengen area in April this year. So this is what we were trying to focus on.
Great. And did you employ any tactics that perhaps you had not used prior to the pandemic? You know, specifically looking at technology, did you use tech at all in different ways?
We have, of course, never had to market the destination when people can't travel. So that was a big challenge. So we tapped more into the social forces at play, and we tried to address that in our campaigns. And we used technology when we were in the joy scrolling campaign, for example. We had never used technology in that particular way. And also when we were broadcasting the sound into the Icelandic nature. So we used technology to try to convey this message in a new way.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, you know, Iceland was one of the first to welcome visitors again. And, you know, I just wondered if you can talk a bit more about that and how you were allowing people in, and also what trends you're seeing in travel that might continue into 2022. I think, you know, it's been mentioned that road trips were high, for example, as well as small group tours. Can you talk a bit about some of the trends you're seeing?
Well, from what we hear, then the travel trade is very optimistic about 2022, and we see that travel trends will in some respects return as they were before COVID, for both group tours and individual traveling. And there seems to be a trend towards staying longer in the destination. We are seeing that this year, and we hope that that will continue in next year. And also for local experiences and sustainability, that seems to be top of people's minds.
Great. And looking at past events that have affected the region, you know, you had the volcanoes, I think it was 2018, that impacted the region. You know, how did that prepare you at all for the pandemic? And how perhaps did your strategy kind of mirror what you've done in the past, or perhaps how is it different for the pandemic versus past major events that have impacted the region?
Well, the nature of Iceland is the biggest draw for visitors, and living with its challenges and benefits has shaped the character of Icelanders through the centuries. And this has resulted in a resourceful spirit and an attitude which we call "Þetta reddast," and that means basically things will sort out in the end. And our strategies have built on this, and they continue to do that. So we need to be agile because of things can change really quickly here in Iceland. And we need to be resourceful. And that has meant that we did not have to change how we operate very much. So we were able to draw on that character and experience.
Great. Another concern that has been in Iceland, though, was this idea of overtourism, you know, prior to the pandemic, with too many people almost coming to the destination. Do you have concerns of overtourism again once we're past COVID? And how do you kind of strike the balance of wanting to get people to Iceland, but also preserving the destination?
Well, access to Iceland is and it will always be limited by the amount of flights offered and hotel beds. We are an island, so there are limits to how many people can fly here. And in Iceland, there are a few places that are more frequently visited than others, but Iceland is a very big country with an abundance of sites all around the country. We saw a very fast growth in the last decade, and that contributed to this narrative about overtourism being in Iceland. We grew from 500,000 in 2010 to 2 million in 2018 and 19. But 65% of the growth was out of the high season. And we saw visitors traveling further and staying longer all around the country. So I think we have a much stronger infrastructure in Iceland to cater for visitors that are coming. So I'm not very worried about overtourism being a problem in Iceland.
Got it. Good. Then we can all go visit. It sounds there's a lot of places to go. So, I mean, and just on attracting people, one recent advertisement you released, which was pretty funny, was a take at Mark Zuckerberg and this whole idea of the metaverse. I encourage anybody who's listening to check it out. It's really funny. But can you talk a little bit about that idea and the response it's received?
Yes, I can say this was the quickest turnaround ever on a campaign. So we were working basically on another idea. When the creative team saw the Metaverse video, and of course it was everywhere. And Metaverse is this vast virtual world to inhabit and explore. And we thought this would be a really fun way to talk about the reality that is Iceland and to showcase what Iceland has to offer to travelers, but without using VR goggles. So basically a week after the idea came first, then we launched the video. We managed to, do all of the work there in between. And the video went viral and was covered in media outlets all around the world. We've seen over 1,000 coverages and 5.5 billion global impressions. The video has been viewed over 6 million times, and we have received so much positive feedback from people saying they want to visit after seeing the video. And the best response was probably when Mark Zuckerberg himself commented on the video, saying he loved it and wanted to visit the Iceland very soon. And we were over the moon when we saw that. I'm very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen any initial data that has indicated that people have booked flights already, or more website visits, or anything else that can translate into people actually planning and booking their travel?
We don't have that data ready right away, but we have never felt as much overwhelming, positive feedback for any campaign that we've done. And we were so happy to see that people didn't just love the video. They were saying this actually makes us want to come to Iceland, which is, of course, the aim of it. So we were very happy to see that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you kind of Iceland has a history of sort of these comedic advertising takes. Can you talk a bit about some that you've employed in the past and how that sort of has set you apart as a destination for these funny videos?
Well, we are, of course, a small country with a small budget compared to our competitors. So humor has helped us to cut through the noise and our messaging. And humor can also be a great ally when you need to connect to people and get them to engage. We have tried to use this in our campaigns. A few years ago, for example, we had a campaign called Ask Guðmundur, where there's a lot of people called Guðmundur in Iceland, my father, for example. And we created the first human search engine, so people could send questions to Iceland and some random Guðmundur around Iceland would answer. And we got a very positive response to that. Actually, Barack Obama, he was president at the time, he mentioned this in a speech, which we were also really happy about. But we have very many campaigns like that, where we try to use humor to convey our message.
Yeah. Is there any ultimate celebrity you could get to endorse Iceland that should be on your radar?
I don't know. That's such a big question.
There's probably some you don't want to, so it's a balance. Great. So I just want to turn a little bit back towards sustainability and talk about some of the sustainability efforts that you've been looking at going into the new year. And specifically, maybe if you could talk a bit about how tech can help fuel these sustainability efforts.
Well, Iceland has the future vision of becoming a leading country in sustainability in 2030. And the Icelandic government has set and importantly legalized the goal of carbon neutrality by 2040 and has put forward a financed climate action plan. So there's a lot of emphasis on these things in Iceland now. And today, 100% of electricity produced in Iceland comes from renewable sources. 70% from hydropower and 30% from geothermal, which of course positively impacts the quality of life in Iceland for citizens and also for travelers. And this saves a great deal of carbon emissions and money. So there's a lot of infrastructure that is focused on this, and tech development is focused on this sustainable goal of Iceland in whole. And at our website, visiticeland.is, people can read about the sustainable travel, in particular in Iceland, and for example, calculate their carbon footprint and offset. And we have also created campaigns to encourage sustainable and responsible travel behavior. Iceland was the first country in the world to introduce a tourism pledge called the Icelandic Pledge. And we also had a few years back a campaign called Kranavatn, where we were highlighting the benefits of the tap water in Iceland. So this is embedded in everything that we do to try to highlight how you can travel sustainably and be responsible in Iceland.
Right. From the consumer perspective, are you seeing this becoming more of a priority? Are you seeing more people sort of demanding that from the travel that they're doing, the travel providers that they're working with? How are you seeing consumer perspective shift? And also, are you still seeing it more relegated in Europe? And are you seeing it branch out to other countries such as the US, for example?
I see this is a definite trend that is emerging, and I think it will only go stronger. We are seeing more conscious travelers, and they really want to travel to responsible destinations that have responsible messaging and have these options at hand. So we can feel that, both from consumer, but also from the companies that we're dealing with. And if you want to stand out from the competition as a tourism company, you really need to have these things in order. And there are more and more companies that are setting the sustainability agenda and policy. And I think this will be a very strong trend.
Yeah, I think it's really important that the destinations and travel providers are communicating their efforts, because, if it could, from a consumer perspective, if you're not looking, you need to know somehow. So I think that's definitely a big push, is that needs to be communicated. So I just want to wrap up with one final question on what else is in store for Iceland in 2022. Maybe more funny videos, maybe more, what else do you have in store looking ahead to the new year?
Well, it might be that we're working on the next campaign that we hope to launch early 2022. But of course, I can't say anything about it right now. But we hope it will be well received. And there's a lot of optimism for tourism in Iceland in 2022. We see a lot of bookings. And I think Iceland is top of mind for people coming out of COVID. That is what we are trying to put emphasis on during the pandemic, to maintain the conversation, even when people couldn't travel. Like I said earlier, we wanted to remind people of Iceland, bring them something positive from Iceland, and in the hope that people will choose Iceland as the first destination when they start to travel again.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.